My name is Mike Goldin. I'm a software developer at ConsenSys. We at ConsenSys got hooked up with Meta through a mutual friend at Microsoft. We found out that Meta had been thinking about how blockchains could be used to solve problems in online advertising. ConsenSys at that time had no programmatic ad practice whatsoever, and we were intrigued because we like to think that we do everything. We're kind of a sprawling company, like there's not a whole lot that we don't have our fingers in. But we hadn't done anything with advertising, so it was very intriguing to us that this company, which was already in the industry, was like independently thinking about how blockchains can help solve problems there. So we got hooked up with them. We decided to do this adChain project jointly together. We would bring our blockchain expertise, they would bring their expertise in the actual industry. So what I've been doing is working with the technical team at Meta, along with other people at ConsenSys, including Amin Soleimani, on designing what is essentially an economic game with which people can create a clean pool of supply for the ad tech industry, and in which their incentives are totally like disconnected from CPMs, which are the source of a lot of problems in ad tech. So yeah, we've been like designing a game, basically. So I'm a software developer, like I said. I joined ConsenSys as an intern back in the summer of 2015. I worked on the Ujo Music prototype. That was kind of my claim to fame back then. I worked with Simon de la Rouviere and John McDowell. That was kind of like the coolest thing that was happening in the early days of Ethereum. I was like writing code for that. And then I joined ConsenSys full time after I graduated, and I was writing more code and more code. And kind of in my opinion, the rock stars of blockchain world are game designers. And we're talking about games and blockchains. We're not talking about video games. We're talking about incentive games. So because these like, what blockchains give us fundamentally, it's like programmable money. And when you can program money, you can program incentives. And when you can program incentives, you can kind of program people's behavior. That's like the really interesting thing fundamentally about blockchains. So this is the first project that I've gotten to work on where I get to be a game designer. So that's been like really, really exciting for me professionally. A problem in ad tech, a big problem is botting. So I'm a publisher, I run some website, and I can just buy bot traffic to like view my page and report it as impressions to advertisers and get paid for this. So in general, publishers get paid on a CPM basis, so like every 1,000 impressions, whatever, you're gonna pay me $1, something like that. So that's a bad incentive system because everyone downstream from the advertiser themselves are incentivized to just report as many impressions as possible. And impressions are abstract things, so I as a publisher am incentivized to report it like very loosely. And because it's extremely hard to detect what a bot is, like the way that I as a human actually behave on a web page, very easy for a bot to mimic, and it's very hard to tell the two apart. It may make economic sense for me as a publisher to buy bot traffic. So that's super bad, and like, you know, estimates are between like 10 and $20 billion a year get stolen from advertisers just like paying bots to look at ads, which is crazy. So the game that we've designed, it's a voting game where the voters are incentivized to create a clean pool of supply with or from which demand can service bid requests. So the way the game works is I'm a publisher. I want advertisers to service bid requests from me. So there's a technology called header bidding. This is something that's already happening in ad tech. It decentralizes or it disintermediates exchanges, really. And this is like a burgeoning technology that's happening independently of blockchains. Something that has been slowing the adoption of header bidding is the problem of discovery. So you're on the demand side, you receive a message from somebody on the supply side, you have no idea who they are. It's like probably a bot farm, 9 out of 10 times, you're gonna ignore it. So exchanges like bring together demand and supply, they solve that issue. What we're doing with the adChain registry is solving the discovery problem for header bidding. So I feel like I've started 3 times, but finally the way it works is, me as a publisher, I make an application to join the registry and I deposit some sum of adToken to do that. So I say, here's a deposit, review my application. So then me, or someone else as an adToken holder, you're kind of like, you're an owner of this decentralized ad network. You know, you have executive authority in this thing. You're gonna look at this applicant and you're gonna say, does this look like a bot farm? Does this look like fake news? Are these ads intrusive? Is this something that I want in my ad network that I'm an owner of? And if it looks fishy to you, if it's not something that you want in your ad network, you can raise a challenge. So the way you do that is you match the applicant's deposit in adToken, and this raises a challenge. At this point, we just open up a token vote to all the token holders. So it's a very standard commit reveal token voting scheme. It's derived from Colony's partial lock token voting scheme. And this is something that, like, even in the relatively young life of Ethereum, we know that, you know, the Ethereum blockchain is good for is token voting. This is like tried and true stuff. So if a challenge is issued, it goes to a token vote of the token holders. The winning block of voters, the winning group of voters, whether it's yes or no, the loser's deposit, whether it's the applicant or the challenger, that is forfeit, and it gets divided among the voters on the winning side of the vote. So hopefully the shelling point of this vote, this voting game, is around kicking people out who are not high quality publishers. Because if you do that, that means advertisers are going to want to continue servicing bid requests from this registry. So long as that is happening, publishers will want to join, and publishers have to be depositing adToken to do that. So for you as an adToken holder, that's like a positive virtuous cycle for you. And your incentive, again, totally disconnected from CPM, your only incentive is to keep this registry clean and free of bot traffic. So I think it's really, really cool that we can use these things that Ethereum is kind of, you know, natively good at to solve a you know, so far unsolved problem in a novel way. So adChain is a smart contract. Because it's a smart contract, like any other smart contract that sits in the blockchain, it's like an open back end to software. So anyone can wrap this thing in whatever kind of functionality they like. adChain is successful if people start wrapping this core registry functionality in products and services that I can't even guess about yet. In terms of concrete things that will definitely happen, ConsenSys will actually be spinning up an ad tech practice to build products and services on adChain. So I'll be working on that. I believe Amin Soleimani will be working on ad tech stuff for ConsenSys. So we'll be spinning up ConsenSys adTech, or CAT, and I'll personally be working on that. Our immediate focus will be to get the protocol out the door, like get it up and running, spinning, humming, happy, all that stuff. But yeah, we'll be hiring people to do everything from, you know, just like enable kind of, you know, basic existing header bidding stuff on crypto payment rails, to more exotic things, which I would love to do, like building buyer-centric tools for strong attribution of actions on advertising, which is kind of like the holy grail, in my opinion, of like, you know, where we eventually want to go with ad tech. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter if you serve an impression to a bot if the bot buys a car. We don't care if things are bots. Bots are only a problem because they don't buy things. So if we get to a place where we have really, really good attribution technology and we can let demand pay on the basis of performance, that would be awesome. And my intuition is that we're getting close because of open identity systems like Uport. So, you know, longer term, I would love to build something like that around adChain. I had not done anything with ad tech prior to joining this project. I'd done some energy stuff, I'd done some identity stuff, but I never really even thought about ad tech. What was shocking to me, more than surprising, but shocking, was just the extent of fraud that happens routinely in the industry. And, you know, like, people say like $20 billion. It could be higher than that. Nobody knows. I mean, there's just a huge amount of money that's getting stolen every year. And what's also shocking, the reason that the numbers are so high, is because the incentives are so messed up. Like the CPM, I've said this before, but the CPM is just like one of the most perverse incentives in the history of any business ever. And it's poisonous because botting is so hard to detect. Like, because botting is hard to detect, it is economically rational to buy bot traffic as a publisher. So it was shocking. There are some things that we do in adChain, or this is technically outside the protocol, but we propose using bidirectional TLS for authentication. Bidirectional TLS is not technology that we've invented. It's like old technology. It's out there. People could be using bidirectional TLS today to authenticate the parties that they're doing business with. But nobody does because there's no incentive to do that. There's no incentive to be better than you currently are at your job because you're making money by stealing and buying bot traffic. So what's interesting, what's promising in general about blockchains in this space is that just like we were able to create a novel game, a novel economic incentive game, to create whitelists where the curators of the whitelist have no attachment to the number of impressions served through those sites, we can probably create novel games that solve other problems in adtech. And there's all sorts of stuff that we want to do in the future where so adChain most directly services direct peer-to-peer header bidding relationships, but using things like bidirectional TLS, we can actually authenticate entire supply chains. We can do we can have diffs on ad markup and bundle signatures up in messages and have publishers be able to authenticate, or advertisers either way, authenticate the entire supply chain, every single hop that the ad passed through. So this stuff is not easy. I mean, we spent the past 6 months, I came here in December, just coming up with what seems like a relatively simple game, and it is a simple game, but it took us 6 months to get there. So there's a lot more work to do. Hopefully it gets easier as we get more experienced with it, but there's definitely a lot of promise here, and certainly, the current state of affairs is not working. My favorite Ethereum project is Gnosis. And I think that the reason is, when I am thinking about how to make systems work on blockchains, 85% of the time, the system devolves to it's a prediction market. So I think that when people look at things like Augur, things like Gnosis, and they're like, oh great, I can bet on the outcome of a baseball game, that's cool, but I think you could use prediction markets. You could have, for example, prediction markets serve as this second layer meta signal as to somebody in the adChain registry's reputation. You could have a prediction market running on whether someone is going to get their listing renewed. And that's a second level reputation signal which people can just plug into. So I think that prediction markets will find applications in all sorts of nooks and crannies of all sorts of industries and infrastructure that we can't even imagine yet. I think that rational and efficient prediction markets are game changing, to be cliche about it.